author, columnist, editor-in-chief of LibertyNation.com, talk show host, and conservative policy advocate.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Welcome one and all to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network from our flagship station, the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. Liberty Nation Radio is sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. And welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio American Network. I'm your host, as always, Mark Angelides, and we are joined today by Michelle White, Liberty Nation correspondent. Now, Michelle, I asked you to come in today because you wrote a fascinating piece regarding Mike Lawler on the pages of LibertyNation.com last week. But I noticed that this week that there's something rather fascinating happening with the New York U.S. representatives. And I'd really like to get your take on this, because what we've seen is we've had Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader in the House, a New York representative. And he's been saying regarding the illegal immigration debate, he's been saying that what we need to do is reel back on ICE enforcement. Of course, he's been saying this is right. the party line. But what he's not saying is let's provide amnesty, let's provide pathway. Right. Just saying that this enforcement needs to be reined in. And then on the flip side of the coin, and this is why it's so fascinating, you've got Representative Mike Lawler, Republican from New York City, and he's saying there's 25 million illegal immigrants in the country, or undocumented as he now calls them, which is fascinating, by the way, in itself, isn't it? Because for pretty much all my adult life, the figures being, it's 11 million. It's 11 million. And nobody's willing to change that. And now all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, it's 25 million. But what happened, right? Well, how did the numbers jump here? Well, I think we know how the numbers jumped here. But now what he's saying is that we need to provide a pathway. And he's saying it's not an amnesty, but a pathway, a legal pathway, so they can, the illegal immigrants, they can work, they can pay taxes. And he makes the point of saying, without recourse to public benefits. But an amnesty is an amnesty by any other name that would smell as sweet or as rotten, right? Because essentially what that's saying is 25 million people, they crossed the border illegally or overstayed or however they got into the country, breaking the country's laws. Let's let them stay. And so it seems to me that the positions are essentially reversed here from Republican to Democrat in the traditional sense, aren't they?
Right. That is fascinating. Right. Because he's going one step further. They've almost switched sides, but they cannot have committed a crime. He did make that clear,
sure,
other than the crime of coming into the country illegally. And he was on the Will Cain show last week, and he argued with Will Cain about how it's not amnesty. But as you said, amnesty by any other name is amnesty.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating, I think, because I wonder if it weren't the midterms this year, because of course during a presidential year, what you have is everybody pretty much follows the party line. So the Democrats are no human being is illegal, or a lot of the Democrats in elected office are no human being is illegal. These people, they're just trying to live their lives. They've come here for a better life, which is a valid position to take. But they follow that line during a presidential election. And Mike Lawler was fully supported. It's not as though he's an anti-Trump Republican.
Right.
So he was on board with Donald Trump's message. We got to deport them all, right? That was his message. But now that it's not a presidential election, now it's all about their own careers. On the line. Now, of course, I'm almost certain that I can't see how Hakeem Jeffries loses his seat this time around. And Mike Lawler's reasonably safe as one of five Republicans out of 26, is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, 26 coming out of the Empire State. But now they're really trying to pander to both sides of the aisle. And I wonder if it's just the worst abuse of politicking.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know who he's pandering to, because when you're stuck in the middle like that, you're really not satisfying anyone. But and I've read that he's a vulnerable Democrat, but I don't know. This is the first time I've heard him speak like. I mean, sorry, Republican. He's a vulnerable Republican. So it's the first time I've heard him speak like this. But he's getting pretty much laughed at when he was on the Will Kane show. So I don't know how far. I don't think that's going to pass. But it is an interesting dialogue when we're bringing forth the DHS funding. We're talking and we're approaching a deadline. It just seems like it's a lot of political theater running up to that deadline.
Yes, although at time of recording, this is being recorded before the February 13th deadline. And something interesting about that, Michelle, is that you have that there's a big opposition against the DHS funding, because obviously all the other bills went through and they've just held DHS funding.
Right.
So I don't know how this will play out as we're recording beforehand. But the fact is, if it goes through, DHS gets funded. If it doesn't go through, if it does go through, DHS gets funded. If it doesn't go through, the only thing it impacts are things like TSA and FEMA, because the One Big Beautiful Bill Act already provided, I think it's $80 billion for ICE and customs. So they're not going to stop. They've got 4 years at like $18 billion a year in funding.
And the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard,
of course. Yeah. So FEMA shuts down. We're talking a theoretical, because it might actually pass coming, but FEMA would shut down. TSA would shut down, which a lot of people might be on board with. The Coast Guard would shut down. But the one thing that the Democrats specifically are holding out on is ICE and Customs and Border. But
which
that's
is already
funded.
Right.
Now, the thing is, Democrats know this.
They do, right. They just don't think
they don't know it, right?
They don't think Americans know it. So it's virtue signaling, and they think Americans aren't aware. And maybe a lot of them are not. We don't know how many are paying attention to what's really funded in the One Big Beautiful Bill, but it's definitely theater.
It's roughly 80 billion, isn't it? So hopefully all of America will tune in and listen to us here on the Radio America Network. And they'll understand that this really is theatrics. All of this talk about, we've got to strip provisions we've got to strip funding from ICE. It's not going to happen in the next 4 years for which it's fully funded. Trump's out of office in 3 years, and unless, of course, he says, "Fooled you, I actually am going for a third." But he's out of office in 3 years, so even whoever comes in next, whether that be Republican or Democrat, there's still a year's worth of funding to for this, and it just it strikes me that politicians who are trying to cash in politically on this are being willfully deceptive. And that brings us back to Mike Lawler and Hakeem Jeffries. So Hakeem Jeffries, as we've discussed, there's almost this party switch going on where Hakeem Jeffries is saying, the enforcement's wrong. He's not saying we need to deport them all. He's saying the enforcement's wrong. Sorry, but he's not saying that we need an amnesty. Whereas the Republicans, Mike Lawler, is saying we need some kind of amnesty without wanting to call it an amnesty. And it seems to me that the whole theatrics of what's happening today in America has reached a heightened, I'm not going to say unprecedented, because that's never the case, right? It's never the case.
Right.
But it's reached a very particular level of pearl clutching hysteria. Is there a way back? Is there a way back from that?
Well, there are some reasonable Republicans who are agreeing with the Democrats about some changes to ICE enforcement, such as a body camera, which would protect both. I've heard lawmakers say, though, they were in support of the body camera for ICE agents. That would protect both of the agent and the illegal alien that's being arrested, so that no one's falsely accused, and everything's recorded. They're not in favor of the masks because these agents are being doxxed and the families are put in danger. So, and I think they have a lot of support for that, but they are moving toward the middle and saying, we're with you on the body cameras. They're drawing down troops or ICE agents in Minnesota. So Republicans are making the move toward the Democrats. It doesn't seem that they're moving toward the Republicans. And then you have the outliers like Mike Lawler.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, of course, on the other side, you've got people like John Fetterman, Senator John Fetterman.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. So just to wrap this up, it's interesting. The body cams on law enforcement gained a lot of prominence just after George Floyd, and I think the people who were pushing it thought that this would show just how badly the police force is treating people. But we've seen case after case of screaming people with knives coming at them on the body camera. And it's really been a major backfire, I think, in terms of publicity, in terms of officer safety and citizen safety. More importantly, I think it's been quite the boon. But yes, we shall just see how far these theatrics go. Michelle White, thanks ever so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Andrew here on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, as always, Mark Angelides, and we're joined by Liberty Nation's Economics Affairs Editor, Mr. Andrew Moran. Thanks for being here, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So, Andrew, you titillated and entertained me this last week with a fascinating story on the price of chips. Now, many people think I'm talking about fries because of where I'm from, but no, I'm talking about potato chips. Oh, of course, both are made of potato. But,
computer chips,
or no computer chips. The chips, I don't know how else to explain this. The little ones that are kind of dried and come in a little packet that I don't know what people do. I don't eat them. But the prices of chips are coming down. Why?
Yeah, so PepsiCo, they're the maker they have the
Doritos
portfolio of
Lay's.
Doritos and Lay's and all that junk food that's just horrible for you. And they in their latest earnings report, they said they're going to lower prices by up to 15% for these products because of waning demand. But you see the writing on the wall. Other fast food companies have joined the foray of lowering the prices or changing their products to adapt to evolving market conditions. And one of those changing conditions is the overhaul of the SNAP program or food stamps. We're about in one state, I think it's up to 18 states now are either restricting junk food or overhauling the requirements and criteria of using those SNAP benefits.
I mean, call me crazy here, but are we essentially saying that prior to these rule changes on the supplemental nutritional programs, that essentially the American taxpayer was subsidizing people to eat potato chips?
Yeah, I find that fascinating because you look at some of the numbers of these companies. So Coca-Cola, for example, there was a study done a few years ago, and the conclusion was that around 1/5 or 20% of Coca-Cola's revenues came from SNAP benefits of recipients using this money to buy Coca-Cola, to buy Diet Coke, to buy all this other wide array of junk that's just absolutely atrocious for you. But then also, I mean, it's not just Coca-Cola. You look at the
Tell us your feelings on this food, Andrew. Don't hold back.
Yeah, I don't touch this. I mean, I'm a coffee drinker and water and maybe sparkling lemon water. But anyway, so you look at Walmart. Walmart is the biggest recipient of SNAP benefits, of course, because they sell the food. They sell, they have the cheapest food in the United States. So of course, that's where you want to stretch your food stamps dollar. But then also at the same time, you start diving a little bit deeper into those things. There was this one study I found, I think I said it in my article, and it showed that the food stamp recipients, they don't buy private label. They buy the main stuff, the main brands that are more expensive, but they're not more nutritious or healthier. So there's a lot of trends, consumer trends that go on inside the SNAP benefits. Just one of them is buying the junk food.
And so once you've removed, we'll agree it's essentially a subsidy then, right?
Yes. Well, not direct. I mean, you're
not direct, of course.
Saying,
of course.
Okay, here at $20, go buy chips.
The qualifier, essentially, yeah.
It's indirect.
So what would happen if we removed subsidies from other areas of United States commerce, healthcare, insurance, things like that?
Well, I mean, the market would do its thing, you just...
And do the same as the potato chip prices and respond by lowering prices?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is an excellent point you make, because subsidies, I think the line is when you subsidize something, you get more of it. You tax more, you get less of it. So with healthcare, you mentioned healthcare. Healthcare is a great example of how subsidies have really worsened and made healthcare unaffordable. Because Milton Friedman, he talked about this in the 90s. And he said the worst problem with U.S. healthcare is that everybody is spending everybody else's money. It's one of the four ways of spending money. You spend your own money on yourself, you spend your money on somebody else spends your money or their money on somebody else, and then everyone spends everybody else's money on somebody else. And that's the problem with healthcare affordability or just society in general, is that subsidies make things worse. And, in this case, it's your health that's with the junk food. Health is the ramification of subsidies.
It's the unintentional consequence of subsidizing different things. And now that subsidy is supposed to benefit a certain group of people, right? So whether that's people who are on SNAP or people who are getting medical budget funding. But the people who are not receiving that, they're actually getting hit twice, right? They're getting hit first because it's their tax money that's going to pay this subsidy. And then they're getting hit again because the marketplaces are reacting. Well, we're getting this almost guaranteed income through a subsidy. Let's, we're doing well. We can afford to put this up because it's going to be subsidized anyway. So the lion's share of our profits will just continue to rise in that particular marketplace. And so the person who is not receiving the subsidy, number one, they're getting hit because they're funding that subsidy directly. And then number two, they're getting hit because the market's then deciding we're getting subsidized on this. Let's put the prices up. So they're actually getting hit twice on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the expectations with this PepsiCo. One of the conclusions, I should say, with PepsiCo is that for years, the SNAP benefits were able to subsidize PepsiCo's products through artificial demand. So by having artificial demand, you're able to keep prices elevated. But now that demand is falling, either because of SNAP or because people maybe are more health conscious. I'm not talking about the SNAP benefits, but non-SNAP households, they become more health conscious, or maybe they're more price conscious. That's they're patronizing this company far less than they were a couple of years ago.
Well, there's actually
the whole "Make America Healthy Again." People want to are focused on their food.
Well, that's something that we shouldn't ignore in this discussion. That there's another two aspects that could be behind it. Sure, the balance sheet seems to suggest that, and indeed PepsiCo's statement seems to suggest that they're doing this because of the SNAP related changes. But there is also the Make America Healthy Again aspect to it. I would imagine that a certain segment of society are seeing what's happening to that and thinking, well, maybe I should be cutting out, the Pepsis or the sodas, the sweet treats, things like that. And another aspect is, of course, the persistent, I guess it's becoming a ubiquitous term, the cost of living crisis is another thing. So maybe because these things aren't cheap, right? The high sugar, high fructose, they're not that cheap. Not compared to fruit and vegetables and plain old meat, right? Thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, as always, Mark Angelides. And we're joined by Liberty Nation's editor-at-large, Mr. James Foyt. How are you, Jim?
Doing all right, Mark. How you doing?
I'm not bad. You've really been chasing the news in recent days, but I guess that's partly because the news has never really been quite so forthcoming and so unwieldy.
The news runs, you chase it, I guess.
Yeah, you have to. Not like Max Headroom, because that turned out badly for him, as we discussed earlier. I knew that factoid would come in useful at some point.
That's it.
But yeah, everything seems to be moving at a shocking pace in the news world, which means that stories have to be carefully picked. Where do you spend your attention budget? And Jim, you cast your attention budget towards the TrumpRx, that without much fanfare, to be quite frank, fanfare, launched this last week. And now TrumpRx is an initiative, I think the president so it came up with it in September of 25, or announced that it would be forming in September 25.
Yeah.
And is now live and up and running. Could you give us the breakdown of what it is, what it does, and why it's even in existence?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with the why, I guess. That's kind of the beginning, I reckon. The a lot of people don't think about medicinal costs because their insurance covers it, whether that's insurance that you pay a ridiculous monthly premium for, or Medicaid, Medicare, or whatever, which the American taxpayer pays a ridiculous price for.
Congratulations, American taxpayer.
I know, right? But anyways, all around the world, a lot of other countries are paying nowhere near as much as what Americans are paying cash value for a lot of drugs. And the TrumpRx website highlights some of those. And I did some independent research where I actually went and basically shopped for the drugs based on other countries and here. And it's all pretty. What I found was prices are going to vary from location to location, even within a country, but it's all pretty accurate that it's all within the range, what the website has posted. And what you can see is Americans do pay a ridiculous amount more for most drugs than most prescription drugs.
Yeah.
Than a lot of the rest of the developed world. And so what the president did was he negotiated these deals with certain pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer and such, and to where they will give us what they call most favored nation status. So we get better pricing on the drugs in return for being exempt from some tariffs. So, it's kind of it's
a quid pro quo.
It is. Yeah.
So this most favored nation thing, just to clarify that, because obviously I read your article on this, it's good to specify what that is. That doesn't mean that it's a comparable price to, say, for example, somebody in Kazakhstan pays for the medication if they can even get it. It's developed countries' most favored nation, so it's the price that's available in developed nations. The lowest possible one is the price that Americans now get those drugs.
Right, and the direct comparison that TrumpRx uses is with Canada, so that's a good example.
It especially after Michael Moore bewitched a generation with his movie that didn't. I guess it hasn't really lasted the test of time. So this basically is a place operationally. I guess people go on, they look for the specific drug that they must have a prescription for. That's the key, right?
Yeah,
and they can then say they're going to do a purchase with it. They get a voucher to print or to show on the phone, and they can take that to a pharmacy, and then they'll get that for the price.
Right. That's ostensibly how this works. And I did try to. I called the Walgreens down the street, and they were like, "Oh, I don't know. You'll have to call corporate." And I was like, "All right, never mind." But best I can tell, that's exactly how it's going to work. That's certainly how they present it on the website, and as well, under each drug, you have the coupon that you can print or show on your mobile device, right, presumably, as well as a list of pharmacies that actually carry that drug and honor it. And a lot of it will just say most pharmacies or pharmacies that carry this. Some of it will say specifically this whatever location in this specific spot. I guess maybe some drugs are just not as commonly carried as others. Is probably what that comes down to.
Sure.
Yeah, and so you can get on this website, and it's a lot of it's hype. A lot of it's, when you hit the landing page, you've got a drug comparison with a chart that shows, the very first thing is I forget the drug that it's called now, but it's a fertility drug, and it's the average.
Gonal.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Would if you were paying cash, you would pay like $1,400 per 450 IU dose.
Yeah.
And whereas in Canada you pay, I think it's like $300 or $400. And so now then it's got the new price is like 200 something. So you get to see this 90% saving, 93 I think it was percent savings. Most of the drugs the savings aren't 90 something percent. Most of them are around the 50 to 60% range, which is still not nothing, right? I
Sure.
mean, that's significant.
So there's a couple of aspects to consider here, isn't there? Because this, number one, is I guess that this most benefits people who would either ordinarily pay cash for their medication, right? Or people who get their medication through insurance, but then they've got to basically do a sum in their head, right? Or on their computer and figure out, is it cheaper for me in terms of my copay to get this through here? Will it affect my long-term insurance prospect? I mean, will it eventually bring down my insurance prices if I'm not using my insurance to pay for this?
That, I think, Mark, is one of the bigger things that a lot of people aren't really paying attention to right now. You mentioned a few minutes ago how this launched without much fanfare, and that was kind of on both sides of the aisle. You didn't see just a major explosion of news hyping it up from the right, and you also didn't really see a lot of hate from the left on it, which is kind of miraculous.
I noticed that, yes. Yeah.
A lot of the left-wing articles reported on it and said, hey, looks like some great savings, and then they countered that with talking about how a lot of your insurance companies are already getting deals like this, or in some cases better. And that's also true. But the difference there is this is a cash price that if you don't have insurance, you can just get this cash price. Whereas, okay, yes, perhaps your insurance company can get a better price, but you're either paying them a monthly premium, which you have to average that out and build it into the price of the drug, or you are you're on Medicaid, Medicare, and the taxpayer is funding all of that. And then, of course, the copay issue, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger issue, really, is that this could be, when I first heard about this, my first thought was, hey, this is a good way to cut out the middleman. Instead of giving all this money to the insurance companies and government subsidies to not just government programs, but private companies that provide insurance, we can cut out a lot of that, potentially, eventually, and save the taxpayers a ton of money. And we just don't tax the pharmaceutical companies quite as high.
Yeah, through the tariff relief.
Through the tariffs, yeah. So it's a shuffling. Like you're ending up with a pretty close to the same result, but the manner of how we're getting there is, instead of taking money away from people to fund this, we're just dropping all of the extra middleman stuff that cost extra money.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the majority of people in the United States have some form of insurance, whether that's Medicaid, Medicare, or private insurance through their work, or even just self-pay insurance, medical insurance. But that doesn't mean that everybody does. And I think that's an important aspect, because there are millions and millions of people who do not have insurance. Right.
And there may soon be more, because we also have, if you go to the hospital, it's very expensive. But if you go to a walk-in clinic, it's usually like $100 a visit or something like that. And a lot of them will say, hey, if you pay $80 cash right now, you're good.
Yeah.
And that covers, you wouldn't go for like an elective surgery or something, but you have an incident, you're sick, whatever, and you're able to get yourself to a hospital, not like call an ambulance incident, then you can do these walk-in clinics. It's much cheaper. They're, of course, also subsidized through taxation, but you can, on the customer end, on the patient end, you can save money there instead of having this huge medical bill, which helps if you don't have insurance, of course.
Yeah.
And then so the other end of that is, well, now if I get a prescription from the walk-in clinic, perhaps I can get a better cash price, and I just, I can get out of this whole rat race of insurance.
Yeah, it's again, this really does come back to that point about how that there wasn't much fanfare on it, but it currently, I think when it launched, I think there were 48 drugs on the register on the TrumpRx site.
40 something. I was thinking it was 45.
Yeah, 40. It's somewhere in there. Anyway, more than 3 dozen, less than 5 dozen.
Yep.
So I guess that's a good range. But of course, obviously the plan is, I guess, for that to just keep going up as more come online for it. one thing I really noticed was that a lot of it was driven towards two things. One is, I guess you'd call them the weight loss drugs that have become so prevalent now.
And which we should point out were originally diabetes medication.
Yes, they were. And the fertility treatments, which the fact that these two things coincide so well with Donald Trump's overall agenda of get America having more babies and make America healthy again.
Right.
I don't think that's a coincidence. But we'll see if it ends up like most other government programs in the long run. But James, we'll be back with you after this break. Thanks for sticking around.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain Mark Angelides, and Jim Fight continues to be Jim Fight. Thank you, audience, for sticking around. Now, we've just been talking about TrumpRx, which, considering the lack of negative press against it, I would say that's probably a win in Trump's column there from the wider Fourth Estate. But there's another one that's very strange, and you covered it fascinatingly on the page of libertynation.com. But there was a recent appeals court win for Donald Trump. I think it's out of the Fifth Circuit regarding his ability to deport people and to detain and deport people. Give us the details.
Yeah, so it was less about his ability to detain and deport people, well, initially, and more so about whether or not these people can bond out. So immigration, as I personally have recently learned, that sounded like I got busted by ICE or something, but through research, I have figured out now that illegal immigration is not a criminal offense, it's a civil offense.
Sure.
And so the rules are a little different. That's what explains the whole ICE not having to have a judicial warrant to force entry in the house. And also that's what's behind them being able to say if an illegal immigrant is arrested and slated to be deported, then they can't bond out. And of course, I guess the argument behind that is, well, obviously they're a flight risk.
Sure.
But so as we have as the administration has ramped up immigration enforcement, we've got millions of deportation arrests, a few million anyways, just since Trump has taken office again. And with that comes a bevy of lawsuits that, for the most part, at the several thousand lawsuits that for the most part at the federal district level, Trump has lost. At the circuit level, however, he's had better success, and that's the circuit level win. So there were numerous U.S. district courts that had ruled against the Trump administration and for these detainees having the right to bond out if they were not captured at the border. So if, like, let's say it's some guy that's been here for 25 years illegally and gets arrested, under the previous interpretation of the rules, that was a different situation, and that guy could bond out. Well, right now, the Trump administration is saying, nope, it's all under the same rule. If you're an illegal for any reason, for any length of time, no bond. So, and a lot of the district judges have backed him up on that. What this ruling in the Fifth Circuit that came out here recently backs Trump, not the,
Yep.
So it overturned a lot of these district court rulings. So that for the moment, unless this goes to the Supreme Court and they rule otherwise, which seems unlikely, that so for the moment, anyone being arrested for being here illegally doesn't get to bond out.
That kind of makes sense, though, doesn't it? I mean,
Right, because you rounded these people up to deport them. No, it's not. We're not talking about people that are awaiting criminal trial and going to do some time in America. These are people who have maybe not committed an actual criminal offense at all, but they have committed the civil offense of illegal immigration, and it's just to round them up and send them out.
Yeah, I know there's you hear a lot of discussion about the difference between criminal and civil here, especially in the last year or so.
Yeah.
And what I tend to find is that the argument from the left is it's a civil offense. You know, why are we punishing people for a civil offense? And
Right.
now my liberty bone starts twitching, and I think, well, let's get rid of all civil. Let's just make it.
Traffic violations are
non-existent.
civil offenses as well.
Yeah, sure. Let's get rid of all of them. But of course, that's possibly the more extreme reaction. But you either have civil offenses or you don't. And if you do, they need to be enforced. And if you don't, then you don't need to do anything. Yeah. And I think you made a very fascinating point there, where we keep hearing also, predominantly, I'm going to say almost exclusively from voices on the political left, and they talk about they're going in there without a warrant to go and pick somebody up, and that's actually the point, isn't it? Because it's a civil enforcement operation. Right. We don't have the requirement for a warrant, and I wonder if there could be like a new Connecticut compromise situation. Whereas, okay, the ICE won't go in without a warrant, but we've got to make crossing the border a criminal offense.
An actual criminal offense.
I mean, that's the trade-off, right? Is that?
Hey, you talked about your liberty bone twitching.
Yeah.
When I found out about ICE having with the memorandum that was released a few weeks ago that was saying that like ICE doesn't have to have warrants for this, my eyes started twitching. I'm like, hold on now, we're busting in people's head. Like, I get the civil versus criminal difference, but let's game it out. Let's talk about the practical effect as the guy sitting in that house that ICE is coming into, whether you're an illegal immigrant or not. There is no practical difference. These are armed and armored men with violence of some form on their mind, whether that's just coming to get you or whatever. I mean, they're ready, coming in without a warrant. Like, it's on the receiving end, civil, criminal, there is no difference. Sure. That is purely illegal construction.
Yeah.
So like, as a guy sitting in your house hoping your door doesn't fly off its hinges,
Yeah, it's the Pandora's box of liberty paradoxes, I think. And like all Pandora's boxes, I'm kind of hoping that hope is still there.
Right.
But there's got to be some kind of compromise going forward, not necessarily with how things are executed, but the reality is that currently the majority support the deportation of the majority in America support the deportation of all people who have entered the country illegally, whether that's criminal or civil. Of course, it's civil. Right. Whether they've committed further crimes or not, the majority, and this is repeated ad nauseum across every poll, the majority want those people deported. Now, it seems to me that and this is my conspiracy mind working. It seems to me that the more ruckus that's politically created, the more confusion that's sown amongst the population. If that can carry on for a long enough period of time, that number is eventually going to switch, because people get tired of this kind of constant propaganda.
Public opinion is definitely fickle.
It is indeed. Although it's been very, very solid, but it's a gradual erosion now, right? Because we see it first with now. A lot of people don't favor the way that ICE are doing things, whereas they did before. And it's a gradual erosion as things get on and on. Jim Fight, thank you for a fascinating conversation.
Anytime, Mark.
And that's all we have time for on this week's edition of Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I've been your host, Mark Angeles. I'd like to take a moment to thank our guests for today. You are appreciated, and to thank you, the audience at home, who takes the time each week to tune in and join us here on the Radio America Network. We're very grateful to have you. Please remember, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.